Microsoft has officially killed off support for Windows 7. Lance Whitney here with us for Tech Republic to talk a little bit more about this, Lance. I think a good place to start would just be, what does it mean to say that support for Windows 7 has ended and what that means for vulnerable companies?
Sure, Karen. So basically, Microsoft supports an operating system like Windows for a period of 10 years, 5 years mainstream support, and then another 5 years for extended support. So we've reached the deadline today for the end of extended support for Windows 7. So what that means is that after today, Microsoft is no longer under any obligation to roll out bug fixes, security patches, or other updates for Windows 7. So if any kind of flaw or vulnerability is discovered in Windows that affects Windows 7, customers are pretty much out of luck. With rare exceptions, Microsoft will no longer supply those types of things. What it also means is that this kind of creates a field day for hackers and cyber criminals, because now they know that so many people and companies are running an unsupported version of Windows, so they can make an effort to create and deploy malware that can specifically target Windows 7 computers. And even for companies that are in the midst of a migration or have even almost finished their migration, let's say to Windows 10, as long as they still have some stray networked Windows 7 computers, those computers are vulnerable. And if some virus or piece of malware or some other type of attack hits that computer, it could affect the entire network.
Well, and I guess obviously the important question here, Lance, is in the meantime, what are companies that are impacted by this? What do they need to do?
Sure. Well, there are a couple of things that companies can do. Obviously, if you're in the midst of a Windows 10 migration, just continue with that as speedily as you possibly can. One thing that Microsoft offers as sort of an interim solution is something called extended security updates. And these are updates that are available for companies that have volume licensing agreements with Microsoft. And what they do is they contain security updates and patches that Microsoft will sell to companies if they do need to protect Windows 7. The problem with these extended security updates is that they can be expensive and they're only available for another 3 years. So they're not a permanent fix. They're just meant to tide companies over until they actually finish their Windows 10 migration. Beyond that, to get some more information, I spoke with Veritas CEO, John Abel, who came out with a report recently about other things that organizations should do. The main objective here is to protect your data. For a company to protect its data, its customer data, its business data, its employee data, financial data. So in the event of any kind of malware attack that takes advantage of a weakness in Windows, your primary concern is protecting your data. So toward that end, John has a few different tips for organizations. One thing is that companies should make sure that their employees are aware of proper procedures as far as storing and using and backing up their data, and also what to do in the event of any kind of security breach that could potentially affect your computers. Another thing that companies should do is to evaluate their risk, find out where their data is located, what the risks are to that data, and make sure that they're covering themselves as far as that goes. A third point is that even if you're not on Windows 10 at this point, you should certainly make sure that you've upgraded all of the recent patches to Windows 7. And then finally, a fourth piece of advice that John offered is that when it comes to backing up your corporate data, that you follow something that's called the 3-2-1 rule. What that means is that you should have three backup copies of your critical data, two of which are stored on different types of backup media, and one of which is stored off-site in a protected and secure way, so that even if your primary data is compromised in some way, you have these current backups that you can turn to in that event.
All right, some really important information there, Lance. We appreciate you talking with us about that. And if you are one of the companies impacted by this, make sure you check out Tech Republic for more on what you need to know. Thanks for watching.